Listen, I just came here to see Galactus, and that's it. Hey everyone, this is D, Movieman, fellow cinephile, popcorn addict, and emerging film critic, coming to you with reliable recaps, reviews, and reactions. And today I'm coming to you all with my out of the theater, in the theater thoughts. This time on The Fantastic Four, First Steps, directed by Matt Shakman, and starring Pedro Pascal, Vanessa Kirby, Eben Moss-Backrack, and Joseph Quinn. Story-wise, it's the Fantastic Four, so you already know how this goes. And I have to say that this being the film to kick off Phase 6 is wild to me because I feel like Phase 4 and especially Phase 5 was a bit of a blur. I just felt like I was going to watch the films and I kind of just kept going and now here we are. So I can definitely say I've enjoyed some entries. I can also say I have absolutely not enjoyed some entries. All I know is once we got to Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, followed by Thor Love and Thunder, that was a double whammy of disappointment that I was not prepared for, and it's been downhill ever since. Like I said, I've enjoyed some, but that was the first kind of like, oh, okay. It was just the beginning of a long list of frustrations and annoyances I had with the MCU. You know, and then it doesn't help that there's behind the scenes foolishness and shenanigans as well. So yeah, either way, here we are. Yes. So here I am in the studio. I figured let me just take a breather really quick and head on home. Too many people, too much noise, too much chaos, folks being obnoxious. And I was just like, it's probably time to go home, and I should go ahead and do that before I accidentally elbow somebody in their forehead. So, before I delve a little bit further into my thoughts on Fantastic Four, please let me introduce you to the MVP of my snack game. It feels so good to say, but shout out to my sponsor, aka Spralt. It's a liquid and salt-based seasoning with about 75% less sodium, so my popcorn stays flavorful without turning me into the sodium surfer. Spralt is officially backing the channel, but they've got your back too. Please feel free to use my official code, Movieman, of course, for 10% off your next order, so that you can also stay salty. In the good way. This film may have featured 4 heroes, but I brought a 5th. I think the retro futuristic aesthetic and style and vibe was so refreshing and so unique. And I love the fact that with that dynamic and with the space race and just leaning into those historic old school qualities, it definitely made for a very calming and soothing experience. Of course, when I think about my grandmother's homes, it just reminds me of just being in a comforting, happy, joyful, pleasant place. And that's what I felt watching this. It just was such a quaint, beautiful, but quirky world at the same time. And I just love seeing the details of the designs, of the buildings, of the homes and the kitchens, like all the things you think of when you think of the 1960s and all the unique visions of what the future would look like with all these gadgets and appliances and all of that. So I loved seeing that, and I just thought it was a great choice for the film because it just added something different for me. Like I said at the beginning, I was here to see Galactus. I still remember how upset everybody was when we didn't get the full visual aesthetic or scope or just the actual true blue design of Galactus in Rise of the Silver Surfer back in the mid 2000s. And considering that my only other experience or awareness of Galactus was with him popping up at the very end of Marvel's Ultimate Alliance, I have to say it was very gratifying seeing him on the big screen, especially that first scene that we get. That was probably the most compelling part of the film with me, along with Shoutout. I am familiar with her as a character, but obviously I have not seen her depicted in any animated film, live action, video game, nothing. So given that this is my introduction to her, I really enjoyed that character as well. I just think the whole dynamic with Galactus and the Silver Surfers and just the bigger, vast situation, cosmic situation that goes on within the Marvel Universe, especially when I think about the Phoenix Force, the Shi'ar, and all of that. Yeah, some of that stuff can be really intense and out there, but I enjoy that. And for me, it was something that really pulled me into the film, especially when it was centered around that. I can also say that the film definitely kept the momentum going, and I could absolutely feel the stakes. There were some moments where I really was just kind of like, how are we actually going to get out of this? So typically we know that the heroes are going to conquer the villains and save the day, but I'll be honest, at a certain point I was just like, I don't know how y'all are going to get out of this. I know you're going to find a way, but I can't. Because every time I thought they had it figured out, then something else would happen. So for me, the fact that it kind of had me on my toes and I really could not necessarily predict, in a sense, what would happen next, that was something else I really appreciated. And now, jumping over to my cons, I will first say, I may as well get it out the way, but Pedro Pascal. Listen. I enjoyed him as Oberyn Martell on Game of Thrones. I enjoyed him as Agent Whiskey in Kingsman: The Golden Circle. Everything else, that's all, folks. I just think Pedro Pascal is Pedro Pascal. And I think that if you enjoy Pedro Pascal and you just want to see Pedro Pascal, then awesome. But for me, Pedro Pascal honestly does nothing for me as an actor. He may do tons for other people, but I just feel like I just don't connect with him as an actor. His performances are not memorable. They don't grab me. I don't feel any sense of connection or depth. Like, it's just like, he's just there. He's just there. And I understand that Reed Richards, I'm guessing this is being taken from the comics, but I understand he was supposed to be more of a stoic, withdrawn character, and his comfort zone is science and being able to know all these equations, and his intelligence and his desire to figure things out. And I appreciate that. But again, it didn't help because there wasn't any additional layers except for maybe like a moment or two where I really felt like, yes, Reed, I understand, I get it. It was a no for me. Now, although I do understand why we decided to forego an origin story, I think that making that choice also led to a bit of a disconnect with the characters. We don't necessarily need to see the very, very beginning, but I would have liked to have seen maybe some flashbacks or just moments of context here and there, because I still felt like I was being dropped in and still didn't learn as much as I thought I would about these characters, even though they're very well-known, iconic characters, especially when it comes to Marvel. And lastly, I of course have to speak on something I've spoken on several times in past reviews. And if you know me, you probably know what that is, because you know, especially as a 90s baby, how I am often conflicted when it comes to CGI. And considering what we've learned about the VFX and CGI and the artists and how wild things are behind the scenes, I can only expect but so much, to be honest. But I'm going to say I was shocked by how terrible some of the CGI was in some moments. There were some moments with the Human Torch that didn't look good. There were some moments with Shoutout that didn't look great. And good gracious, have we learned nothing from Twilight Breaking Dawn? This whole thing where you CGI babies, it does not end well. Every time I had to look at the effects on that baby, I was just like, please. Put me out of my misery, because this is a no for me. It was quite terrible. So when it comes down to it, I would say Fantastic Four is probably about a C plus for me. It's not bad by any means. I didn't think it was disappointing. I think some elements of it could have been better, but I found myself surprisingly entertained and somewhat invested as far as the journey and the characters, but I do think it's something that is going to require a little bit more bolstering as we go into Avengers Doomsday, and I don't know if they're going to try to rope these characters and have them pop up in any other films, because we already saw a reference to this from Thunderbolts. Outside of that, yeah, I think this was a step in the right direction. I, again, at this point, have to just take MCU with a grain of salt. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And I can say, for the most part, even with the flaws and the things I didn't like, because some of it was, but I still think, as far as the experience of it, I like the fact that it was able to distinguish itself from what we typically see in the MCU in a way that didn't feel completely pointless and unnecessary. So, once again, this is D, Movieman, signing off, and I'll see you at the movie.